Besides washing your hands, staying indoors, practicing good hygiene, and social distancing, you can also go to the chiropractor to make sure your body is right. I sit down one-on-one with a practicing chiropractor, Dr. Thomas Taylor, for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and download my free Quintin's Close-Ups app in your Apple or Google Play stores. Dr. Thomas Taylor,
hey man,
welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Pleasure to be here.
I appreciate it greatly.
Absolutely.
Obviously, you are a chiropractor with your own company, Alignment Chiropractor. What is it like for you to be a chiropractor these days?
Well, being a chiropractor is awesome, man. I think this is a great time to be a chiropractor. Great time to be in healthcare. Obviously, we got a lot of things going on in our healthcare system right now. Some things that we're dealing with COVID-19. But being in chiropractic is a great field. A great field for young, new people looking for an interesting alternative to medicine. So, very interesting time.
You talk about the coronavirus. What type of microbial agent is this in your mind?
Well, I'll first start off by saying I'm not a virologist. I've been to school quite a bit. I don't necessarily have the amount of experience as, let's say, some of our leaders at the CDC or Dr. Fauci here in our country right now. But I will say that it is a flu type of virus. It is a flu strain of virus. It's a very serious strain right now. It's something that we haven't seen before up until right at the end of last year, October, November. My understanding is that it got its origins somewhere in China, and it spread pretty rapidly over the last period of a few months. So certainly it's something that we have to be aware of, we have to understand, and we certainly need to understand how to protect ourselves and each other.
And speaking of definitely, sure. And you talk about protecting yourself. Obviously, people are saying wash your hands.
Sure.
Make sure you practice good hygiene. Yeah. What are those unconventional things that we should be doing as well?
Yeah. Well, Quinn, I think the first thing we have to think about is what are some of the normal practices that we should be doing on a daily basis. We should be washing our hands. We should be having good hygiene practices. I think one of the things that people are really struggling to deal with, especially in America, we live in a society where we can do what we want to do, when we want to do it. If we want to go get a steak next door, we can do that. The term social distancing, I think, is one that's pretty new for most people. It's something that we don't really do very well. We, especially living in Charleston, this is our tourism season. Yeah. So we've got seaweed, we've got the wine and food festival. We just got so much stuff going on right now, and to tell people they have to stay in their homes and not really be in communication with other people, that's really hard, right? That's very, very hard for people. So the social distancing thing is we want to make sure that one of the things that you'll hear commonly is flatten the curve, right? So we want to bring the number of cases down to get a better control of what's going on here with this virus. So in order for us to do that, we need to limit the spread from each other, right? And this virus is going to spread through droplets, air droplets, much like the other flu. So it's not technically an airborne virus, but you've got those droplets that can come from a cough or a sneeze or something like that, and that gets in contact with other people, especially when people are in a close environment, if you will, and that causes some problems, right? And that those people don't often always start showing symptoms immediately, and so you can be spreading from person to person. So that kind of term of social distancing is one of the best ways at this point to practice that. So.
And that's a good thing. And you also obviously talked earlier about the strain, and I know there was a big flu pandemic in 1918.
Yeah.
What's the biggest difference between 1918 and 2020 right now when you think this?
Yeah, so I think one of the things in 1918 that you have to look at is every flu strain is different, right? So that was, I believe, it was called the Spanish flu back in 1918. Very devastating to the United States, and each one of those strains are going to be different, and that's why they get a different number, right? We saw, 1 in 18. You had SARS, and then you had the COVID-19 strain. So each one is a little bit different. Each one is going to mutate a little bit differently, and how it affects people is different. So one of the most difficult things right now is we just don't have that much information on this particular virus and how it spreads and how it interacts and what it responds to, what it doesn't. There's some talks about trying to discover like some sort of vaccine or something for it, or some treatments and that sort of thing. So kind of tough to tell how similar it is to 1918, but there are a couple things that we have, I believe, to our advantage here. We certainly have more in terms of healthcare, better healthcare opportunities. We're able to respond to it a lot quicker. One of the other big things is our sanitation. Our sanitation is so much better. We've got better drinking water, cleaner facilities, right? All sorts of things that we can do. People can be a little bit more self-sufficient, right, inside their homes, and that sort of thing that makes it a little bit different from 1918's flu pandemic. So a little bit different, but you kind of think of it being very similar. What are some things that we need to do to help get over that?
And obviously there's a big talk about the high-risk population. First it was the older folks, now they're saying the young folks. What do you say?
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to tell you, man, I rely very heavily on the information that's coming from our experts, right? I don't want to be too controversial. Politicians are going to say what's best for them and who they support and everything. I'm really heavily relying on the information that are coming out from our scientists, right? Our leaders in our healthcare, in the CDC, in the different departments that we've put in place to really give us the good understanding. The people who are testing this drug, the people who are researching, the people who are in the lab doing that work. And as that information continues to come out, we just have to be aware of it. Like you mentioned, those high-risk populations, those are your elderly people. At first we were thinking it was the high-risk populations, the usual ones, which are your elderly, and then you have your babies, right? Your babies and children. And then for a while we were saying, well, it's just really that elderly population, and babies and children don't have to worry. Well, we're seeing now that there have been some cases, right, where children have been infected, and I think our school systems are responding to that because they understand that you can be a carrier for this thing, right? So you may not necessarily have any symptoms, any signs, or it may not be affecting you, but you can carry it from one person to another. And so that's one of the things that I really recommend, I really commend our local officials on doing, is getting those schools closed, man, getting those kids back into the home, keep them from being in contact with multiple other kids who could be sick, administrators who could be sick. So getting them in a safe environment where we can prevent that sort of thing from happening. Some of the other things I've heard that are being done for our elderly populations are giving them specific times to go grocery shopping, right? Different times that they can interact as they need to make sure they're safe. And one of the other most important things we could do, Quentin, man, is we have to look out for those populations. I think one of the best ways to judge a country on how well it's doing is how well it takes care of its elderly and how well it takes care of its young people. And so we absolutely have to make sure that we're taking care of those populations. If that means calling and checking on an elderly person, if they see if they've got their medications, if you can go pick up something for them, check on your neighbors, check on your people around you. I think that's a very important thing for us right now.
And that's when you come into the play, chiropractors.
Yeah.
Because obviously if you get that right chiropractic here, it helps a lot of people survive doing this.
Absolutely. So this is how chiropractic ties in. And one of the first things I want people to really understand about how chiropractic ties into this is there is not going to be any chiropractor that comes out, or there shouldn't be anyone that comes out and said, I can cure this, I can treat that. That's not what we're here to do. What we want people to understand is that chiropractic has an intimate relationship with the spine. The spine has an intimate relationship with the nervous system. The nervous system has an intimate relationship with the immune system. Now, the immune system is our body's natural, innate ability to help fight off different things, right? We're coming in contact with bacteria every single day, from the things in our environment and our air, to the things that we touch, to the food we put in our mouth, to the water we drink. We're constantly coming in contact with different levels of bacteria, fungus, viruses, all of that. And most of the times you would agree that we don't always get sick, right? That's because our body's immune system is taking care of those things, right? Our white blood cells, those things are fighting off those disease-causing agents in our body. So what chiropractic is doing here, and what the chiropractic adjustment is doing for people, is it is just normalizing your body's natural ability to fight off these disease-causing agents, okay? And most people, as you'll see, there are a lot of people that are recovering from this thing, right? So not everybody's dying. fine, and we certainly feel for those people who are, but there are a lot of people who are recovering from this, and that is a testament to their body's immune system and ability to get over it and recover. For as long as you take the precautions that are being set forth for you by your physician, if that's something that you test positive for, listen to the instructions, get at home, quarantine yourself, and get better. And most people's immune system will be able to fight off of that. So that's what chiropractic is here to do: help people boost their immune system, not even just to boost it, but to work the way it was intended in the first place, and help them to recover from anything they come in contact with.
And what type of adjustments are people getting from your office right now?
Yeah, so our office is open. We're seeing people, we're helping people on a regular basis, and what we're doing is we're primarily focusing in on areas of the spine that help to boost the immune system. You'll hear us use this word sympathetics, right? A sympathetic tone of the nervous system. We want to help calm that. We want to help calm the body's ability to regulate, right? To fall from the stress response, right? That kind of this is a stressful time, right? So the body's just got this stress response going on. It's confused. It's also known as fight or flight.
Right.
So your body's doing all kinds of crazy stuff, producing all kinds of hormones. Research tells us that actually lowers your immune system, right? That fight or flight response is meant to get you away from something very quickly. Let's say a saber-tooth tiger runs in here right now. We're going to get up and haul butt out of here, right? That's the stress response. That's that immune response. So that chiropractic adjustment can come in, help to calm that stress or that sympathetic response. And by doing that, it activates and increases the level of your immune system and gets that just to kick in and work for you.
And we talked earlier about sanitation. What better sanitation tools should we be using?
Yeah, I think we have to look at the different types of professions that we're all in. If you're coming in contact with people's food, I think you should you're certainly your levels should always be high in sanitation and cleanliness and sanitizing. There's difference between washing and there's a difference between sanitizing. So I was in the food industry for a long time myself, and so individuals who are in that field understand the difference between those. So I know that our state local DHEC has been giving out some information on how you can ramp up those procedures, make sure you're cleaning your utensils, that sort of thing. For a lot of us in healthcare, it's making sure we have proper PPE, right? Personal protective equipment,
right.
And that's something that's been in shortage around here. I know you've heard about that, different masks and sanitizers and cleaning supplies that are at a shortage. So definitely we want to make sure that we tell people not to hoard those things. If you have them, if you're business owners that have those sort of things, I know some of the hospitals are buying back some of that stuff. There's been some increased production on some of those things around town, but making sure you have protective equipment is going to be good, especially in our healthcare facilities. Providing our nurses, our doctors, those people who are coming in contact with those people with those symptoms on a regular basis, that we're helping them to get what they need so that they can be protected, because those people have families too, and they want to go home to those families, and they don't want to bring that stuff back home to their families. So making sure that we help those workers out, our nurses, our doctors, our hospital workers as well. As far as I'm concerned, we're not really coming in contact with a lot of people who have the quote-unquote symptoms,
okay,
right, that you would see. And because these are people who are regular patients and also people who are looking to protect themselves from this, we haven't really seen much of that. But in our office, we're taking the necessary steps. We've got industrial grade sanitizers that we're using to wipe down our tables. Right. We've got everything, right? We're wiping down in between adjustments. We really don't come face to face in contact with people. We're limiting kind of the amount of people into the office at one time. I think the recommendations from the CDC are about 10 people or so. So we're just kind of limiting that flow, making sure that we keep everything clean and spotless in between the patients, our washing hands in between contact, right? And these are things that we've always done, but we want to just show people a little bit more now that we're doing it, just so they feel a little bit more comfortable. So those are some of the steps.
And obviously, people call this the coronavirus pandemic.
Yeah.
What do you call it?
Yeah. You know what? I call it an opportunity. right? I think about this as an opportunity because certainly this is a very serious thing, and we should not underestimate the seriousness of what's going on, right? Because people are infected, people are losing their lives, right? And people are getting sick, and that is something that we should never underestimate the importance of. But I think we should also take an opportunity to see what good can come out of this. I think we're starting to see a lot of families, right? Families are coming back together, right? Because mom and dad, or the families are working on a consistent basis, and now maybe they're working from home. The kids are at home. I have 2 young kids myself. It's a very stressful time. I give all the credit to the teachers right now because, man, trying to homeschool, 2 young kids is a very hard and tough task. So I give them a lot of credit, but I think it's an opportunity for us to grow as a community, as a society, because now we've got to lean on each other a little bit more, I think, than we have been before. As we talked about, looking out for those elderly folks, those at-risk populations, those people, checking on the neighbor, giving a phone call to a friend or a family member that may live in a different city. So I think it's a unique opportunity for us to come together, much like our country came together after 9/11. I think a lot of people are talking about that, how we're just able to come back together, forget about all of the political affiliations, forget about all of the kind of negative stuff that's going on in our society, really just come back together as a community, understanding the importance of taking care of one another, that love for our fellow man, our human beings, that sort of thing. So I think that's a unique thing as well. And I will say that our earth is getting a little bit of a break right now, right? We're driving less, the skies are getting greener, the water's getting clearer, the animals are coming out, the birds are out, like it's so much stuff. So every now and then our earth needs a little bit of a breather, and I think this is an opportunity for that.
How are you taking care of your body?
Well, I tell you what, man, I'm getting adjusted. I have a chiropractor in town that adjusts me as well. Making sure that we drink plenty of water, right? That's the number one thing. Getting exercise, right, is another thing. So get out, get moving. Great time to be out, right? Just the other day, I took the boys out for just kind of a nature walk, right? Just around our area, went and explored some new areas. Just get everybody out, right? Outside's a great place to be. I know, not quite the beach, right? Because I know there was some issue last week about closing the beach down, getting a lot of people in close proximity, but I encourage you to just get out in nature, right, if you can, and get some fresh air going. That's going to be good for you. I know we got a lot of pollen right now too, so if you got allergies, yes, it's all over the place. So if you got those allergies to the pollen, you may not want to be out as much as everybody else, but if you can, get out, get some fresh air, get moving, get your body moving, drinking plenty of water, making sure that you stay away from just bad foods that'll get you feeling bad and cause inflammation and swelling. Vitamin C is another good one. I know we talked about that. I've got a lot of friends who eat a lot of oranges and that sort of thing. So just getting good, healthy foods, healthy nutritions, right? Don't go to the grocery store and buy everything on the snack aisle, right? Go to the fresh fruit and vegetables area and buy some of that stuff. Cook for your family. That's something people weren't doing before. Now we're having to do that because we're at home. So those are just some of the steps that we're taking, and encouraging everybody to stay aware of those symptoms. If you're coming in contact with those symptoms, if you're having them, it doesn't necessarily mean you do have it, but just be aware. And if you get to a point where you think you need to get tested, it's not a stigma. Just go get tested, right? Just go get tested and see what the results of that is, just to make sure that you're not passing around or harming other populations.
Dr. Thomas Taylor, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Pleasure to be here, my man.
Yes, sir. Thank you.